How's it going, everyone? John Connon here with Neural DSP, and welcome to this deep dive of CorOS 2.1.0 for Quad Cortex. We've added some new devices and added some brand new updates to improve the usability of Quad Cortex. So let's dive in. First up in this update is a brand new feature where you can add an IR loader block or a Cabsim in the capture creation process. This will allow you to audition your capture with a cabinet or impulse response without having to add it to the grid. This cab or IR loader block behaves as it would on the grid, and you can bypass it if you want to A/B and compare it to another output source. So I'm going to create a new capture by going to the top right of the grid, selecting new neural capture, and here I'm capturing a pedal, this red drive here, and I've plugged everything in corresponding with the instructions on Quad Cortex, and it's very important that you follow those. So in this instance, I'm capturing a pedal, but if you had an amp, you'd hear the raw amp without a cabinet or impulse response after it. So here I've got a pedal, sounds like this. But if you wanted to put that capture device through a cab or IR, here, we select this, and you see here that we can engage a cab, and it behaves as it would on the grid, where you can bypass mics, change them out, and make sure you're happy with your capture before you start the capture process. So I'm going to go ahead and capture this. So when your capture is completed, you can A/B between the Cortex and the reference. But here you can also choose to engage a cab or impulse response. So here I'm going to load this cab, this 4x12. So I can hear just the raw sound of the pedal capture, or that through a cabinet. And if you were capturing an amp, you could do the same thing. Next up, all of the cabinet models have been updated to include stereo versions. So if you desire a stereo setup, you now only need one block on the grid. So to do this, I'm currently on the first factory preset. I'm going to select the cab block. At the top left, change device, and you'll see here we now have guitar stereo. Let's change that to a 212. And now we have a stereo cab. Next up, a Lite version of the mono and stereo IR loader blocks has been added, and when using this Lite version of the IR loader, the room reverb has been bypassed to reduce CPU consumption. So I'm going to add this to the current patch by selecting the cab block. At the top left, changing the device by scrolling down to IR loader, and in dual mono, you'll see that we have 2 pages of parameters. Whereas in the Lite version, we've still got the parameters on the first page, but on the second page, we just have a global output, and it's a lot more simplified. One of the main parts of this CorOS update is the new addition of some amplifiers, cabs, utility, and effect devices. Upon installing the new update, you'll see a yellow new label next to some of the devices on the model menu, and then in the actual categories, you'll see a yellow dot next to the specific model of that device. So for example, let's go and add something to the grid. In wah, you'll see this new yellow label, and there the Cry and Clyde wah with a yellow dot next to it. So first up, we've got the Victor Squid channel 1. So if I load this up on QC, you'll see that for channel 1, we've got gain, bass, mid, treble, as well as a focus switch that you can toggle on and off, just like the real amplifier, as well as a setting where you can choose either EL34 or 6L6 tubes, and then a master and an output. Here's how it sounds just as you load it up. Now let's add a bit more gain and push channel 1 a bit more. If you clean it up a bit, here's how that sounds. Let's bring it back up and bring in the focus switch. Heels it off and back on. So you can hear there adds a bit of low end. Let's for now leave that off. Tube type 6L6, let's change it to EL34. Back to 6L6. So now let's change a few of the settings. Let's roll back the bass a bit, maybe boost the treble and go for more of a kind of more aggressive, brighter sound. Let's leave focus off for now. The next new amp as part of this CorOS update is the Victor Squid Channel 2. So opening that up, you'll see that it's very similar. We've just got essentially a hotter version of Channel 1. So let's just hear it as it sounds when you load it up. So let's bring back the gain a bit, clean it up. Let's boost it, cut the mids, leave focus off for now. Let's go EL34. Boost treble a bit, also give it a bit of master and compensate a bit with the output volume. So I've just drop tuned, dialed in more of a high gain sound, something that this amp's more typically used for. So here we go. The next amp we're going to have a look at is called the Matchmore D30 Channel 1, and we've also got a corresponding cab, and this is the Match D30 Sig A. So when you load up the Matchmore D30 Channel 1 amplifier, you'll see we've got volume, bass, treble, cut, master, and output. As it sounds out the box, sounds like this. So let's maybe push it a bit and raise the volume to maybe 6.5. You're going to get a bit more gain and oomph out of the amplifier. Sounds like this. Let's maybe raise this cut switch a bit. And cut the cut switch. And now let's maybe cut the bass, boost treble, let's push it even further, maybe give it a bit of master and compensate, lower the output a tiny bit. Let's hear this. Next up, we've got the Matchmore D30 Channel 2 amplifier, as well as another brand new cabinet, the Match D30 Sig B. Looking at the Match More D30 Channel 2 amplifier, when you load it up, we've got less controls here, just as is the case on the original amplifier. We've got a volume, tone, cut, master, and output. When you load it up straight away, sounds like this. So a bit hotter naturally, as Channel 2s usually are, so let's boost it even further. Now let's raise the tone a bit, also cut the cut, maybe push the master but lower the volume. Let's hear this. The next amplifier that we're going to have a look at is called the Match More Hefe, and again we have a brand new cab, the Match Hefe Sig 02. When you load up the Match More Hefe, we've got volume, bass, mid, treble, a brilliant style, so that's going to be a bit of top end, master and output. Here's how it sounds. So again, let's push it a bit. Raise it from 3 to around 6.5. Let's leave the 3-band EQ where it is for now. This brilliant style, if we raise it up and then cut it, you'll hear there it gets a bit darker when the brilliance is lowered. So that brilliance is essentially just another high-end control. Let's bring that down to maybe around 6.5. Raise the master again, just push the amp a bit more with the volume. Let's maybe cut the mids, and a tiny bit of treble. See how that sounds. And there's one more brand new cabinet as part of this CorOS update, and it's called the Match Hefe V3002. So with the exact same settings, here's how that cabinet sounds. The next device we're going to have a look at is a fuzz, and it's called the MK3 Silicon Fuzz. When you load it up, we've got an attack, tone and level with everything at noon. Before I engage this fuzz, here's how the Match More Hefe sounds without it. And here's it with the pedal engaged. So maybe let's bring the attack down. Raising the attack. So you've got a different kind of tightness depending on where you set that. Tone, let's raise it a bit. So tone's just going to add a bit more brightness, and level, again, you can push it a bit more, give it some more volume. So let's do that. Maybe bring tone back and attack all the way up. Let's see how that sounds. Moving on to the next new device in this CorOS update, we've got two new delays. The first delay is the reverse delay in mono. So when you load it up and add it to the grid, here's how it sounds. So we start off with a general mix control. This is just going to be the balance between the dry and wet signal that you're playing. Feedback, that's how long the repeats go on for. Next to that, we then have a feedback mode with either flip or reverse modes. Reverse is just a standard reverse delay. It will reverse what you play and input into the delay. But with flip, this will mean that each of your repeats subsequently will flip between going forwards and then reverse. So just to demo that, here is the feedback mode, first in reverse, and then I'll put it into flip mode, and you can hear the difference. And now when I put it into flip, and there you could hear the subsequent delay repeats changing between reverse delays and standard delay repeats. Moving on, we've then got a high and low pass. So high pass, as you raise that, it will take off more low frequencies, and vice versa with low pass, as you decrease that, it will take off more high frequencies. So just to demo this, if I leave them both all the way open, it sounds like this. I may want to darken that, so if I reduce this low pass frequency, you'll hear the high frequencies not present in the delay repeat. And then vice versa again. Let's leave all the highs in and take out the low frequencies with the high pass. Again, this is at 800 Hertz. This is quite dramatic, but for the sake of demoing this, here's how it sounds. And below that, at the bottom left, we have a sync feature. So this will allow you to sync the time of the delay with an external device using MIDI, or if you've got a tap tempo set with your QC, it will sync to that as well. And next to that, we have a sync note division, and this means that you can set the delay repeat time to the division set on the dial. Next to this, we then have a delay time. This is only available when you're not in sync mode, because then you can set the delay time manually in milliseconds. Next up, we have an overlap dial, and this is essentially going to control the rhythm of the delay repeat pattern with it all the way to the left. This is going to create a clearer echo sound, and then all the way to the right, you'll have a more textural ambient effect. So with it all the way to the left, here's how it sounds. And with it all the way to the right, you get a bit more of that crossover or overlap. And then next, at the bottom right of this first page parameters, we've got trigger threshold. And as I play, you'll see that there's a light at the top right that activates when I play. And in simple terms, this sets the volume threshold at which the delay is triggered. So with the trigger threshold all the way down or off, it means that all of your dry signal will be repeated. But as you raise that, and that can go all the way to 0 dB, it means that more of your dry signal will be cut off from the delay repeats. So with it all the way off, here's how it sounds. And all the way up. You're only getting the louder parts of that dry signal repeated there. Moving on to page 2 of the parameters. And first up, on the top left, we have the dynamic depth dial. So with it all the way to the left, that means that you'll have less of a variation in volume with this delay. But then all the way to the right, all the way to infinite, you'll get a bigger variation in volume. Next to that, we then have the dynamic mode, and this can be turned off completely, or you can have a duck mode or a gate mode. When in duck mode, this means that as you play, the dry signal will stay on top of the delay repeats underneath, as they're going to duck underneath your dry signal. Whereas in gate, that means that your delay repeats are going to be cut off when you're not playing. So just to demo this, I'll play with a quick attack and release, just to show and emphasize this all working. Whereas if I now change it to gate mode, it's going to cut off those delay repeats when I stop playing. And these dynamic modes, as you can hear, are really versatile, and they can be dialed in using the threshold, attack, release, and knee, just as you saw me do prior to playing those examples. The next control is feedback depth, and this parameter determines the amount of volume drop-off applied to the feedback of the delay. So when in gate mode, which we are, let's add a dynamic depth of infinite, and you'll see there that the gain reduction is going to take off the repeats when the gate is applied. So let's set that to 100, make it really obvious. Cuts it right off. If I then reduce the feedback depth, you'll get a bit more of those tails coming through. So you can hear there that we've got further control over the tails of these delays in gate mode. Next, we've got a gain reduction meter, and we've been seeing this working as I've been demoing. It's showing in real time the amount of gain reduction applied to your delay repeats. And next to that, we have a trails option where you can either choose to have the trails of the delays repeat over preset changes, or to have them cut off when you change a preset. In terms of utility devices in this update, there is now a volume pedal. So I'm going to add that to the grid. And when you open up the volume pedal, you'll see that there's a level as well as a curve. And here we can choose between logarithmic and linear. When linear is selected, the volume increase will be even and linear. However, when you are on logarithmic, there'll be more of a curve to the volume slope as you depress the pedal. So next, I'll assign it to an expression pedal. Here I'm using expression pedal 2, so I'm going to go on expression 2 and select assign. Next up, a new wah has also been added to this update, and it's called the Crying Clyde wah. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to the grid. Assign expression, expression 2, and assign that to the wah. So here's how it sounds. The Cabsim block has been redesigned to improve the user experience when adjusting microphone positions, as well as giving easier access to other parameters. Firstly, the order of the parameters on the screen mimics the order of the Quad Cortex foot switches. On top of this, for all of the Cabsim devices, a high pass and low pass filter has been added on the EQ section of the parameters. The UI for all of the parametric EQ editor menus have been redesigned, and this is the case for the parametric 3, 8, and the global EQ. In Gig View, the UI has been changed for all modes. Additionally, it's now possible to swap or copy scenes via Gig View. It's also now possible to change the color of a scene in Gig View. It's now possible to rename foot switch labels in stomp mode where multiple devices are assigned to the same foot switch. Moving on to the keyboard, the UI has been modified to make the regular, pressed, and inactive states of keys more clear. You can now press and hold keys to access their secondary function, and also double tap to lock the shift key. Another update is that the expression pedal assignment UI has also been simplified. It's now possible to create a new setlist when saving a preset. So, I'm going to go up to the top right, save this preset as, and select New Setlist. And then in this setlist, let's add it to 1A. You can dismiss the sort by menu by tapping the sort button. And on top of that, the default order for each of the sort options has now been updated. You can now use the top right foot switch of Quad Cortex to navigate between presets when browsing a setlist. And also, the ability to swap another preset with another by dragging and dropping has been restored. Buttons have been added to instantly access Wi-Fi and the Cortex cloud if you're not connected to the internet or logged into your Neural DSP account, and these are at the top left of the directory. The foot switch colors have changed when using the tuner. So, when opening the tuner up, you'll see that foot switch C, to control the mute, goes red when muted and white when unmuted. And you may notice that the tuner UI has also had some minor changes applied as well. You can now press and hold the active mode on the grid to access the mode's configuration screen. You can now access the change device screen by tapping the name of the current device in the parameter editor menu. In terms of tempo, the scene selection button no longer displays on the tempo menu when the device is not in scene mode. So you can see here on the tempo screen in preset, there's no scene icon. When I scroll to scene, the scene tempo icon appears, and then in global, it disappears again. In terms of MIDI, we've changed how it can be used to turn certain features on and off. Previously, a MIDI command would have been used to toggle a specific feature on and off. Now, we have a dedicated range of CC values, one to turn a feature on and one to turn a feature off. The features that this affects are turning the tuner on or off, opening and closing gig view, as well as opening and closing the looper UI. For specific MIDI CC values, refer to the manual. A new addition to the freeze device is that the on-off switch has been replaced with a freeze button. In terms of delay updates, dynamics parameters have been added to some of the existing delay devices. To enable the dynamics parameters, set the dyne mode parameter to duck or gate. These dynamics parameters are available in the digital delay devices in both mono and stereo, in the dual delay, as well as the brand new reverse delay and dual reverse delay devices. And finally, a stereo width parameter has been added to the simple ping pong delay. To round off with a few global updates, the overall system audio latency has been improved, and there have been several minor tweaks to the UI across the board. So that pretty much covers it for this deep dive of CorOS 2.1.0 for Quad Cortex. This is a great update full of new features, devices, as well as quality of life improvements. So download it now and enjoy. I've been John Connor. Thanks for watching.
Wow.